just want to start this from where I am. I'm Seth Franklin. I've gone by the names of Hunterbrute, Hunterbrute 224. My father gave me the username Super Dino Man, and later I went by Dr. America, Doctor of Space, all of the above. And I just want to tell my story before I end my life. Back in 2003, when I was in middle school, I would suffer about once or twice a month from extreme pain in my gut, and I would have to sit on a toilet for 30 to 40 minutes. It was not fun. It was terrible. But I dealt with it, and I got my way through, middle school and early high school. Moving forward, in 2007, my father and my mother decided to get divorced, and my father kicked me out of the house, called me a failure of a son, all that fun stuff. And I ended up moving in with my mom, and she won custody, and I skipped class. It was a rough period for me, and very often I was sick, and I would spend a lot of time in the bathroom, but on top of that I would spend a lot of time, of course, trying to grieve with people in Goron City and My God and all that fun stuff. I know my life story doesn't mean much to many people. So, in 2009, really about 2008, I was in the forums of My Aperture Labs, thinking with portals. I wanted to mod Portal. It was one of the biggest impacts in my life. I used to go by Super Dino Man back in the old days, and during that time, I gained admin access to Excite mod, EXITE, and through that mod, I sadly, as a young kid, thinking I had something special, I leaked it. I won't name the people that I knew on the team at the time, but yeah, I irreparably damaged that mod. And later in life, I knew people like Pelpix, Quarterlife, Mahalis, a lot of good people I worked with. And they helped me with my initial stages of learning SourceEngine and everything else, trying to develop SourceEngine. And I was able to use a texture file to basically do an overlay, so I could make portals for the game Portal look like anything I wanted. And it worked. And then from there, I created a mod group called Portal Project Beta, or today known as Portal Project Beta Dev Team. That was really with a guy named Nick. I don't know who he is. He was a Russian guy. He really went by Nick, but he also went by Cave Johnson, and then Cave, and he also had some names I won't say here. And through that, I also met Reap Blue, Caboose Jr., or who goes by Junior these days. And we wanted to really just make a presentation of a old school Portal beta build. So going from Project Beta, this went through when I got my job at Publix in 2010. I was working at a really shitty restaurant, and I kept trying to get that Publix job. So during that time, Reap and I kind of fell out of step, and we never really fully connected until about 2014, but it's a bit later in the story of where this goes. So by 2010, I was working a lot of hours. I was pulling 40, 50, 60 hours at a time a week. And they were using that against me. They were restricting my hours. Then one day I would have 9 hours. The next day I'd have 12 hours. Then the next day it would be 5 hours. This went on through about 2012, when things really got bad. I want to tell the story now, going back to about 2007, 2008. I was good friends with Tuxified, who ran FKN-owned, which would be spelled as FKN0WNED. He was a good guy, but he often liked to flaunt his wealth. He mismanaged the cheap website, and from that, I was already friends with Christopher Nicholson, Zombie, as many know him, leader of Goron City, and I would grief with him very often. And during that time, I met a few other people, and one of the major players was a guy who went by Industry. And Industry and I, in private chats, both through Ventrilo and some other discussions on Steam, and many of you may remember Xfire, we decided we would found a website called thecore.net. And we got it set up with Mike, Pikachu Jones, whatever. You know him as Goron Pikachu and all that fun stuff. I was cut out of that. But I was the one running the core.net, or the previous FKN-owned third-party Ventrilo server. So I just started banning everybody. And they ended up calling my place where I was living, and I remember getting woke up by my mom saying, "Oh, Anonymous is calling," and all that fun stuff, This is prior, of course, to the Docs Wars. It was pretty funny. I thought it was a good grief. They got me pretty good. At that point, I had joined Goron City, and Snafu from MyGot and a few others were like, "Oh, what the fuck, man, join a real griefing group," and all that fun stuff. But we moved forward after that, because all of us got banned from FKN-owned, and the core.net, of course, as we all know, ended up dying. But I was one of the initial people who founded that site. I was one of the major players with FKN-owned. Going back into the cheat scene, I won't name any of the websites or anything. It's not really important when it comes to who I am and what I've done. So let's go outside of my griefing stuff. Back in 2008, 2009, really, on the Source Modders community, I used to do a lot of work for a community called Left 4 Dead Mods. I made an email, of all things, because we had Left 4 Dead maps and Left 4 Dead mods. So I made an email called L4DModsWin at gmail.com, which is no longer mine these days. We'll come back to that later in this story. I wanted to find a way to get more than 4 players in a co-op perspective. So what did I do? Well, I went to the source mod community and I found the ability to spawn bots. Now there's a command in SpaceEngine where you can take over those bots. So I created an automated script where players who would swap to spectator when we would make a, say, versus game, and then they would take over those bots. And yes, it caused crashes and everything else, but it worked. And from there I was able to really get the community going in a direction where we had more than 4-player co-op, and it worked. We had people like Stefan Bada. He's a guy from South Africa. He was doing a lot of work in Dubai at the time. He was the individual behind Left 4 Dead mods. We had Phoenix, fantastic guy I used to work with a lot. We had Sly and a few others. But we were able to really refine the method on our server and automate it because of the source mod community. So in 2009, when well, really, it was when Left 4 Dead 2 was announced. We ran into an issue in the community. Stefan, the guy who owned Left 4 Dead mods, he was really in favor of the boycott. I was not, on the old Face Punch forum and all that. I was, telling people to go F themselves and all that, which, as you'll see, is pretty standard for me. I was in favor of Left 4 Dead 2. I knew it would open up the door to a lot more modding and everything else. And from there, once there was that fracture, I was handed control of all the L4D mods servers, which I worked directly with Chet Falazek and others from Valve. We were mostly doing experiments, and we were seeing engagement and trying to figure out what players wanted. Leading up to that, by about 2010, we ended up getting the Crash Course DLC. That came not fully, but in part due to our efforts with, in part due to what we were doing locally on our servers. So from the Left 4 Dead mods community following that, a lot of this really boiled down to what can I do with SourceEngine? And yes, during this time, I was griefing and I was having fun with people, but that was back really during the Counter-Strike Global Offensive, testing days. And I was also working very heavily at that point. And as we move forward, let's get into 2012. So in 2012, at least early 2012, Left 4 Dead mods was dying. Left 4 Dead maps, well, they were outpacing us. I was working, as I said earlier, for Publix, and I had a motorbike, but my motorbike broke down. And this would have been about February of 2012. So at this point in time, that would have been about 13 years ago. And I remember I got on a mountain bike and I just pedaled. It would have been about 4.5 miles. And I weighed about 95 pounds. So I got to work. And as I started my job, I was transitioning into the grocery department. I did not feel well. My hands were shaking, everything was really odd. And then what happened was, about an hour in, I couldn't do my job, and I had to have a friend of mine take me to the back of the store, and he put a ladder down, and suddenly the next thing I remember is I was handing my phone to my manager, and he was calling 911. And next thing I know, I'm being loaded on a stretcher, and I don't know what's going on. I'm out of it. I had lost control of my body. My hands felt like they were clenched shut. And then I remember I was being wheeled through the store. Suddenly I'm on the back of the ambulance. And the guy said, I don't have access to his chest. And he cut my apron and he puts the EKG stuff on my chest. And I remember hearing the beep, 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 beep. And then there was this moment where it goes beep, and it just fell off. It was like when you stand up too fast. And then that was it. I was gone. There was nothing. And the next thing I remember was being pulled out, and I remember this pain in the center left of my chest, like, just below my pectoral muscle. I could feel it. And I remember the guy saying, I got him back. I gave him a shot of epinephrine. And then he puts his hand on my hip and he says, where's your wallet? I need your insurance information. And I just remember laying there going, what? He yanked me out of the void? And now you're asking for my insurance information? Well, they put me in the hospital for 3.5 days after that. Things get fun after this. Well, not really fun, fun. By April of 2012, I was out of work mostly. I mean, I still had my job, but they kept giving me time off. And I found a community. Really, I found it through looking up Celestia. If anybody knows Celestia, I was really a big fan of Celestia mods, and I wanted to fly Star Trek ships, and I wanted to have fun. And through the forum from Celestia, I found a forum called SpaceEngine.org, and I joined it. Probably the biggest mistake of my life. I don't want to check the date. I assume it was about April of 2012 during my recovery. I joined the Space Engine forum, and I saw that there were spaceships you could fly. I saw the procedural generation things. I was not very experienced when it came to GLSL or shader programming or any of that. So I joined. I figured it would just be a shit post, all that fun stuff. And I started to meet people. There was one of the first people I met was Ansa. He went by Ansa too, and I was a shit poster and I was trolling, and it didn't matter, whatever. He was really chill about it. And then I met another guy, and that guy was working on 3D models, and he died, of course, sadly, but he was the reason I ended up learning how to 3D model by 2013. So it really was this strange amalgamation of nonsense, I guess, just trying to have fun, trying to explore the universe. I didn't even know Vladimir at the time. I never really got to talk to him until about 2014, which I'll get to. So by 2013, 2014-ish, somewhere in there, it's hard to remember. It was just before I lost my job at Publix. I was offered moderator status on the Space Engine forum, and I didn't want it. I had done it enough. There was nothing I could offer. The moderator bullshit, it wouldn't have done anything for me. But I was dragged into, funny enough, a Skype call with Ansa and Harbinger Dawn, of all people. I had been making jokes about the Boston bombing and all that, but they told me, they were like, well, we've seen what you've done, and, you told us who you were and what you worked on, and come on in, just take the fucking position. You don't have to do anything. And I said, fine. So I accepted it after the third or fourth offer, and I didn't do anything with it. I had no use to be a moderator. I didn't really care. But I was already modding the shaders, I was modding textures and all that, and I had just gotten into discussions with Vladimir, space engineer at the time. At that point, I had been basically smashing together shaders. I had no knowledge base, and interestingly enough, my messing with the shaders ended up where we had updates coming to the program, and then I was told I would be part of the team. I have no formal education in any of this, and I went, okay, fine, whatever. And I wanted to see where we could go from there. And by about 2015, 2016 is where things got kind of fun. And I want to ignore a lot of the Project Beta drama and the DDoS wars and all the nonsense that happened with the griefing groups and people from Tyler McVicker's community. That's not really what I'm trying to focus on here. I want to focus on, at this point, more of the space engine side of things as we move forward. So, by about 2015, 2016-ish, really by about 2016, I had to leave Florida and I had to move up to Michigan. things were really bad. But I had already done at that point hacked forms of volumetric nebula. I had done ship effects. I was working heavily into warp drives. I was a big fan of Harold White's work. And I was trying to convince Vladimir to move to really to the Alcubierre system. But he didn't really do that until, well, let's say a bit later. And so I was able to get the visuals done with Vladimir, at least. Well, really, it was just, black holes attached to a ship. And then I was able to show Vladimir how you could just split the horizon or whatever, like the sphere. And he was able to implement that by, I think, about 2016, 2017. So that's where it was at that point. And I had already lost everything. And he offered me in 2016, after I had moved to Michigan, it was about 2,000 to 2,500. Well, it was more like 2,400 a month to continue the work I was doing and keep making mods and everything else. So after all of that, by about, I'm going to jump forward a bit. So by about 2000 late 2016, early 2017, I had already been working on the workshop page. I made the banner for the workshop. I set up a lot of the images on the Steam store page. I was also working with him prior to that with the Greenlight page. And so everything you see and all that, that was my work. I don't care what they say. That was my work. Well, really, it was Sean and I, Harbinger Dawn. We worked very extensively on that. We would spend hours upon hours upon hours. It was an investment where I knew it was valuable. So, as we move forward, by about 2017, Vladimir once again kept offering me money. I couldn't take it. I was on Social Security disability. I had won that case in 2014 for my previous work. And, there's a certain amount of money you're allowed to earn. So I told Vladimir, until we have a company, until we launch, you don't have to pay me, because how much I loved the project. And I worked for free for years, from about 2015 all the way through probably about when we launched on Steam, which I think was 2019. And I was the one who actually launched the project, talking with Vladimir, because he was unable to do it, and we were able to get it launched. And I was not paid. I was not paid fairly. I was really not paid at all. Outside of Vladimir tossing me a couple $1,000s here or there, barely covered rent. But for me, it wasn't about the money. So as we moved forward, as we go into the year about 2018, Sean and I started working heavily on the Steam page, and we wanted to get it done. We had the screenshots, we typed it out. I remember I remember Sean telling me not to spend as much time on it as I was spending, but I kept saying, we gotta get money coming in, we gotta do this. This is important. And, we did launch, but it took 18 months. But I think the work I did was valuable. So, June 11th rolls around. I remember we weren't able to launch at the time we were supposed to, and my inbox was blowing up. 2019. And I messaged Vladimir and I messaged Sean, and Vladimir had been sleeping at the time, and Vladimir got up and he said, launch it, launch it, launch it. So I launched it. And Sean got mad at me, and it was a whole discussion we had. Because it was supposed to be Vladimir. He was supposed to click the button. And before I continue, I just want to say, yeah, I met up with him in 2018, and we had a lot of discussions and everything, but I want to just tell the story of all of this. So we launched it June 11th, 2019. It went pretty good. We were overwhelmingly positive. And I was given control of, outreach, trying to build connections, advertise the program, and work with the community. I built a really robust community. People had a place. I was able to get the server partnered. I was able to get control of the subreddit. My goal was always to create an open space of discussion and communication, and I kept pushing this repeatedly. And what happened, within about 2 years, I was behind the warp drive mechanics. That was the reason Michael Moros was hired. I'm the reason why there's even a fucking warp drive shader at this point. It doesn't matter, it's not important, but I want to point that out. SpaceEngine would not be where it is at this point without me. They will tell you now that I had no involvement with any of this, blah, 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 but that's not true. I was always breaking shaders, I was doing beta testing programs, I was running events. I did all the outreach. And then we get, let's say, to 2022. I got Alex Long, Sindri hired. The greatest mistake of my life. So, let's throttle back. I've always been a shit poster. Always been. I like to mess with people, like to have fun. Well, Isaac Arthur was one of the guys who understood where I was coming from, and suddenly I met a guy named Sindri, and I got him hired later, of course. But Sindri, he would hang out with people like Old Timey, myself, Danny, and others. We would play Call of the Hunter or whatever, and he would sit there, and I kept telling him, oh, you got a job ahead of you, you got a job ahead of you, you got a job ahead of you. And as that kept going, he kept playing, he kept hanging out. And then Sean and Vladimir would say, what does he have to offer? What does he have? And I would argue in favor of him repeatedly, constantly, just argue in his favor. And then, well, he got hired. And this is where things get really fun. Once Sindri was hired, I would be invited, funny enough, I would have to be invited to team meetings. So he'd be there and he'd be given bullshit about contract this and bullshit that. And Sean and Vladimir would eat it up. And then anytime I would have an issue with it, and I would say, hey, I don't like that, it would become an issue. And then slowly, as this progressed, I was no longer in these team meetings from the guy I got hired. And I kept wondering, why is that? And of course, there were issues where other people in the community would notice that. And funny enough, those people who noticed are no longer part of the SpaceEngine community. And I wonder why. they were targeted, they were removed. So I would sit here, no idea what's going on. And this would go on for weeks at a time. Then suddenly they'd go, oh, you're sick. Oh, you have disability, this. And yet they would not approve my increase in pay in the initial stages, nor would they talk to me or tell me what was going on. And then they would make demands like, oh, you need a webcam. Well, I don't have a webcam. I have a phone. And then when I would use my phone, they would say that wasn't good enough. So you can see where this is going. So let's jump forward to 2022. In early 2022, around the month of April, May, I was given a initial review paper for my Social Security. Now, back in 2019, Vladimir had told me that he would pay me around $2,500 a month for the work I was doing. Anybody who knows me, anybody who knows what I've done, you know what I've done. And I denied it. Why? Because I thought the money should have been invested in the company. Now, by 2023, I was not being paid fairly. I was being paid about $20 under the federal maximum wage you can earn for Social Security. So in 2022, we used the company to defraud the federal government of the United States. That was an intentional defraudment. And at this point in my life, I'm willing to admit that. I was only being given about $1,400 a month on top of, at that point in time, roughly, I think it was about, $1,370 by about May of 2023. They would not increase my pay. They would not pay me fairly. And they knew I was going to lose my Social Security. So, as we move forward into, say, July, well, anybody who knows anything knows what happened. From the workshop and everything I had built, suddenly I had no access. I was not able to do my job. Now, initially you would think that's just a me problem. But here's the fun bit. Donatello, Ansa, and others maintained their rights, their privileges within the server, the dev server, and within the Steam community. Now the question is, why is that? Why did they target me? So as we go forward into August, suddenly Sindri, Alex, makes an announcement calling me a threat, calling me all these things, and that it'll come out. Now, they took away all my permissions. That's pretty funny. I will give them that. But that's fucked up, considering I was told my job was secure in May during the team meeting. Now, if my job or my position is secure, and then I hand you the Discord server under that agreement, wouldn't anybody agree that I'm secure, that they can't do anything against me? Within that 4-month window, they took away all my permissions, they robbed me of everything I had built, and they openly attacked me, discriminated against me, as the EEOC told me, on my grounds of disability. The problem is there's no legal grounds for me to do anything against them. Now, people today are mad because, oh, well, Doc, whatever, deleted some channels on Discord. Yes, I deleted some channels on Discord. But that was only in protest because I was not given the respect I was owed by the law. But they knew I was poor, and they knew I was broke. So let's move forward now. July rolls around. All my perms have been removed. Now, I've always been, since the old griefer days and all that, a very suspicious individual. You know, don't trust a man more than you can hand him a dagger and the reach you can make to stab you in the back with it, kind of thing. So, I knew I was getting fucked. I knew I was getting screwed. And I knew it was Alex. And I warned Vladimir, but Vladimir didn't listen. So, what happens? My permissions are stripped. I had already been very cautious. So in every channel of the server, this was not unauthorized, nor was this covered by any bullshit contract, whatever they want to fucking spin. I had set my account on every channel to have admin, just in case someone tried something. It was a protective measure because of how much I believed in SpaceEngine. Well, my own actions got this guy hired. We signed away all our rights to make him CEO. And within a month, less than a month, the first person he targeted was me. He got rid of me. Now, while I would say that that is suspicious, that doesn't quite directly point at it, but he had convinced Sean and Vladimir I was a threat. And I had told Vladimir, yes, I had intent to sue him if he wasn't going to work with me. Now, where are we following that? So following all of this, let's go into August of 2023. I had communicated with Sky Leas and a few others who had agreed with me that I was being underpaid, overworked, and I was not being treated fairly. So I contacted Vladimir. Vladimir said, no, let's talk this out like people, blah, 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 before we go to lawyers. And I said, fine, here's what I want. He never responded to that message, and within about a week and a half, I was suddenly cut out of everything. Forum, admin gone? Why is ANSA still an admin on the forum? Why are these other people who never signed contracts still admins? You all need to ask that to them. You see what's going on. They specifically targeted me. I worked for them for free for years. And I was underpaid and overworked. So all I did was ask them for fair compensation. Suddenly I'm a problem. Now, as we go into this, Vladimir stopped talking to me. They had a meeting. And then from that meeting, they tell me 2 weeks later, on the day of August 18th, that I am no longer being paid, that I'm no longer part. And then the worst part is, as we look at the legal case going forward, they made the argument that I was a fiduciary. Well, how could I be a fiduciary if you're cutting me out of my fiduciary duties? You removed me from the server. You removed my ability to see anything going on to fiduciary duties. Therefore, you violated the contract, not me. And I didn't even read the contract. But I can guarantee you, you violated it, not me. So now let's go from August 18th, 2023. What happened? I reached out. Nobody would talk to me. Vladimir was bitching at me about that I would say Sindri was a bad guy. Well, Sindri is a bad guy. To be quite honest, he's a fucking criminal. You're a fucking Canadian, Sindri, suck my dick, blah, blah, blah. You're a fucking criminal. And you should be ashamed of yourself after I got you hired and I fought for you. Now, from that point, I was not given any explanation from being cut out of everything. Yet ANSA and others who never signed anything still had their positions. Go look at the roles. Go look at the fucking forum. Go look at the Steam page for the group. Why are these people still admins and moderators and not me? You see, I was specifically targeted. Why? Because they didn't like me politically, and they didn't like my perspectives on life. And I have a lot to say on that I won't say here. Not yet. Maybe in the future, but probably not. You see, they basically targeted me because of a difference in opinion. And they feared me because I'm disabled. But they knew I was so poor that I couldn't defend myself. So let's go on further from August 18th. August 18th, 2023. I was cut out of everything. Now, imagine you're in my position. No one will talk to you. You can't open up a chat. They kicked you. Now, remember, they call you a fiduciary. They call you a representative of the company or a majority shareholder and all that other BS. But you can't access the server. You can't see anything. And the entire time, the guy you think is your friend, in this case Vladimir, laughs in your face and says, "Ha ha ha, you'll just get money every few months." Now the funniest part is, he told me, this is the worst thing. He told me I'd get $5,000 every 6 months. My rent was $1,600 a fucking month, and I had just lost my disability payments. Just think about that. And then Sean, Harbinger Dawn, has the audacity to tell me, "We're not going to let you go homeless." Yeah, how much you going to pay me, bro? And the moment I brought that up, suddenly I'm out of everything. There's nothing. No one's talking to me. I'm a threat to the... You're damn right. I went into that Discord server and just deleted channels. That was a protest. That was the initial protest. Anybody would have done the same thing. When you have people laughing in your face about how broken, poor, and screwed you are. Well, let's continue. Following this, Alex makes a statement on Slack saying, "Don't record what Seth says. Just record everything he says." Well, you know what? The legal system is fucking corrupt. And Alex, you're a fucking cuck. You're a piece of shit. You could suck my dick. You see, in the United States, there's a thing called the freedom of speech. And you violated the contract first, not me. So let's continue from that. You lied. You manipulated my friends. You turned them against me. And you lied. That's the key bit. So, from August 18th and after, all you did was screenshot a bunch of bullshit myself and others said and try to use it against me. Yeah, that's fucking criminal. But let's go forward now. You say you served me papers, or I was served by the court personally on the 5th of December. That's not possible. I was not home on the 5th of December. In fact, I was gone until the morning of the 7th, and there were no papers. You never served me. In fact, I was alerted online. That is not serviture. You broke the law. Now let's go forward even further. You say I was served between the dates of the 8th and the 20th. That's not possible. You're a liar. Why? Because I was packing shit up and I had shut down my fucking internet. And I got the fucking pictures to prove it. And I got the fucking data to prove it. But you have the money. You see, you knew with Cosmographic. You criminals knew. You criminal graphic pieces of shit knew I wouldn't be home. You knew I wasn't there. And you knew I got kicked out of my apartment by my landlord on the 20th. I was already halfway across the country when you filed a contempt of court charge that I was never served. I never saw those fucking papers until I was already in another state. So stop fucking lying. Suck my fucking dick. You're criminals. You're pieces of shit. And you're just targeting a disabled American. And you know what I'm going to do next with all of this? I'm going to release all my records now. All of the court record is going public. Everything you've done, everything that you say I said, all the deepfake, all of it is going to go public. And you know what's going to happen? Nothing. No one's going to give a shit. But the truth will be out there, Alex. You're a piece of shit. And let me end this with this. From all of this, if you keep pushing forward and you keep going after me, I am armed and I will defend myself against unjust and undue arrest. So suck my dick, Cosmographic Software. You are criminals, you are liars, and you have manipulated the court against a poor, disabled American who is armed and who will defend themselves. And you can fuck off. As for the court order saying final judgment and trying to default this back to Michigan, it falls back to what I have said. There was no representation. I was not given representation by a jury. I was not given proper legal representation. I was never given legal advice properly. And on top of that, my family had to go into debt to pay to keep me out of jail or potential jail because of the lies of you, Cosmographic. Yeah, you owe me money. I don't owe you. You can suck my dick. So, fuck off. Go fuck yourselves. All that fun stuff. You see, you're never getting a fucking penny because I have nothing. I own nothing. I have nothing. And you wasted all this time. And you're going to waste more time. And if you keep going after me as I talk shit about you, because I'm going to keep talking shit. That's how this is going to go. I'm going to keep talking shit. And you know what's going to happen? You're going to have to send the courts. And you're going to have to fucking murder me. And if you murder me, well, that's going to look real bad on your part. You pieces of shit. Fuck you, Alex. Fuck you, Sean. Fuck you, Vladimir. Why'd you send the fucking FBI to my door? Why'd you send the fucking cops to my door? You know what? Mike Jones, that friend of mine, he had every fucking right, Vladimir, to send the FSB after you. Because you're a piece of shit. You were supposed to be my friend. You were supposed to defend me. You sent the feds after me. I didn't break a law. You did. You just have money, and I don't. So, you know what? Fuck you. I have guns. You don't. Hey, Alex. Just remember, give me back my Left 4 Dead Mods account, or shut it down. Because when you send the marshals, and I defend myself, and they murder me, Cosmographic is going to look really bad. But you know what you can do to honor my legacy? Get rid of my fucking account. That was mine. You have no right to L4D mods win. You have nothing to do with Left 4 Dead mods. And you know what? Stefan said the same. You're all a bunch of cringe lords. And you're all pieces of shit.